Okay, so Ibrahim, we haven't decided exactly what we're going to talk about, but let's just go with it, okay?
Yeah, let's roll with it.
There's a lot to talk about. What I really want to talk about first is the difference between digital photography or filmmaking versus like film, analog photography and filmmaking. I know that you actually just started to shoot in film this year, right? Am I right?
Yeah, that was the first time I shot in film. Yeah, just some couple of photos and yeah, but
And I'm sure you start to feel like the difference between how you would perceive even like the image when it's digital versus film, right?
Of course. There's a difference, and it's kind of obvious actually between digital and film. And actually, the more you kind of read into this topic and like look up online what people are saying and what kind of topics that have been discussed in regards to this to film versus digital, like you kind of start to see more and more differences between both. And it's an endless topic actually. It's quite a big topic. Yeah.
I'm actually curious, like, did film change the way you would shoot in digital? Like, honestly, did it actually change, or for you it's just like another experience?
So shooting the first time on a film camera, I don't think it changed it quite a bit. But maybe that because I had prior experience like with it, you know, like I knew about it, like I knew about the whole process, so I just picked up the camera and shot. I think like the thing that is really nice about film is this like kind of excitement. It creates a kind of excitement because it's very much based off the idea of like everything is finite, right? While in digital you don't have that kind of feeling. In film it's more like you have a like in your head this idea that I have a limited amount of shots and I have a limited amount of film that I can shoot with, and so that kind of changes your thinking process while you're working, right? You become more picky and you become more choosy of what kind of shot do you want to pick, and you kind of observe more. It kind of pushes you in a way a little bit more, right? So
you're just more and more careful, right?
Yeah.
Actually, by the way, just off the topic, I actually, there's one time I was thinking about what exactly is like the limit for digital photography, right? If you think about photography, in a sense, it's just like, if you really want to like, what's called burn it down to the most fundamental concept of photography, right? It's basically freezing the moment. Okay, so if you think about again, I'm a bit going off track, but I just find it really interesting.
No, go ahead.
If you think about freezing the moment, right? This whole concept of freezing the moment, how far can you push this concept, right? So when as you said, film photography is very finite and it has lack of quality. Okay, it might trigger some people, but lack of sharpness, let's say, lack of certain amount of detail compared to digital nowadays, right? So it's like the most original way of freezing the moment, let's say. Film is like that, right? And I've been thinking, like, what is the ultimate end of photography? I feel like these 360 cameras is getting another step closer to what photography would be at the end. So in 360 is like you freeze the moment, like the whole surrounding 360 degree, right? And I'd imagine the ultimate way that a picture would be is a space where people can just navigate, like in a 3D world, where they can, let's say I just captured this room for one split second of me maybe spilling the cup, but then you can navigate this whole room in a 3D manner, and then you can look at every detail. You can change the focus,
kind of like what Google Maps has, right? Like that thing where you can put yourself in a spot in the street and you can look at it in a 3D environment.
Exactly. But in a way that you can just like go around, but everywhere you go, it has the detail that you want.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I mean? Like,
yes,
Leica, they actually had a camera. It's called like a 3D scanner, and it's basically a thing that you put inside the room, and it's just gonna start scan the whole room, and then you can, it will start to build up like a 3D model inside your computer where you can just navigate around the room, and it's like it creates a whole 3D space of your room, and then you can literally just go anywhere you want. But it takes a whole lot of time, and the quality is not that good. But I just find that that's actually like the beginning of this technology. But I feel like eventually it's gonna be like a really high quality of that technology, and it can be applied in filmmaking. Let's say someone acted a very good scene, and then you can literally just replay that whole scene, but in any angle that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's possible?
I think so. Okay, like this is the kind of like technical, like maximized technical capability that we can reach from like an objective outside of art standpoint, I think, to some extent, because when you look at photography, like in the context of art, right, of being an art form, like, do we necessarily look at a photo because of that whatever it has, or do we look at it for the sake of pleasure, like looking at this beautiful photograph, right? And so yes, like when you put things in the context of 3D and looking at details and looking at everything, like specific details, I think that is amazing for the purpose of like documentation, right? Like let's say you want to document something, or you document a moment in the past that's very important in the most way possible, right? So you want to see every little detail and every little like thing in that frame. Then like I think we could reach that point, definitely, like, because I think we have reached that point, right? Like Google Maps is already doing it, you know. It's just that what has been reached is not necessarily been is not artsy, right? Like what Google Maps is doing is not
it's more
artsy.
like a functionality, right?
Yes, it has more of a function. But actually that's a very interesting one. What if you could take that and apply it into the context of art, you know? And so we would have a 3D photograph that's artistic.
Yeah,
you know.
But for me, I had that thought is because like sometimes people felt that they haven't got like the best shot out of this specific location, and then they wish they can go back and take some more picture of that place.
Yeah,
you get what I mean? It's like
yeah.
If you had that 3D space of that environment, and then you can navigate with any lens that you want, and then still take like normal photos, you would want to go back there. Or I don't know, let's say this technology can be applied to weddings, so you can go back there and take any moment that you want from your specific wedding.
Yeah,
it's like you could, and the reason why I thought of this thing is because I saw that they have these new job title called gamer photographer.
Okay,
let's say there's a game in CS, or I don't know, like Valorant or something. And basically, they just hire these photographers. They can navigate inside their map, and then they take very nice pictures for their promotional.
Oh, I've also seen
posters.
that in GTA. People in GTA 5. So you have the character has a phone, and you can take pictures with it. And I've seen people actually do that. But I yeah, bro. And I don't know if they were like actually serious about this, but it's such a. I thought that like that's such an interesting thing. Like, what if this could be a job in the future?
It is a job. Like there's actually gamer photographers. Like you take photos for games for promotional, like promotional purpose. But that's like the game, you know. But this concept that you can navigate anywhere you want as long as the photos look good, it's just very intriguing to me, because that's the virtual world, right?
Yeah.
And
it's more like things have been taken to the extreme.
Exactly.
Like you're a photographer on the virtual world. Like that is different. You know?
That's a virtual photographer, huh?
Yeah.
That's actually pretty interesting. But that's like the next level. But anyways, I want to bring back to
film versus digital.
Film versus digital. Okay, so I have actually really dived deep into the comparison between these two, and I personally really love film. What it gave me, like it actually changed me. But I'm still gonna have to say, from a very objective perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's still subjective in a way, but from most of our, if you look at things from our benefit, I'd say digital is better than film. Okay, this might trigger a lot of people, but you're gonna agree with me if we look at 5 specific categories.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's these 5 things. Okay, the price, the speed, the functionality, the quality, and the process. Okay, we'll look at it one by one, and I'll go through it very quickly. Price, obviously, digital is cheaper.
Yes.
It's finite versus infinite.
Yes.
Right? And each film is like, let's say 36 exposure versus an SD card, which is, you can photo dump it and you bring back, it's clean and you can take unlimited. And the sky's the limit. If you have a 1 terabyte SD card, it's like, as long as it's big, you can, whatever amount you want, you can take it, right? Versus there's a maximum amount of exposure you can get from a raw film, and you have to pay to develop the film.
Yes.
So you have to pay twice, basically, right? You've been through that. You have to pay a studio, and then they're gonna develop the film for you. So that's the price. And if you look at the price, digital wins. Now we'll look at speed. You take a photo with the film, you have to develop it, and then the whole thing might take 2 weeks, right? You shot the photo and you cannot even see it on the first place. And every time you take a photo, you have to what is it called? You have to wind the film.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to like move it. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to switch to the next exposure, and the whole thing just takes time. And for me, my camera didn't have this automatic exposure detection. So I have to use my phone, and I download this app that can check the exposure for me, and then I'll know what settings I have to set for my film camera, and then I take the photo. So every time I do it, I have to check the exposure, right? And so this is like speed. So when we talk about speed, digital wins again, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about functionality. So what can we talk about? Like raw photos. You can take in different picture profiles. You can have these autofocus. All of these things are either software or like hardware updates, and they have a lot of functionality. So again, like, so functionality wins, digital wins. Now comes to the last 2 things that has the most debate, which is quality and process. A lot of hardcore filmmaker, they still believe that film has better quality, and that, I think that's a really subjective topic. Like, I'm not gonna say film is better than digital is better than film, but if you look at the idea that if you can zoom in really into the photo, if you want to do that, then digital wins, right?
Yes.
Digital, like, you can never stop the amount of pixel they can have. Like, they're just gonna get more and more in the future. But film, there's just that much amount of like grain you can have in one film, right? Obviously, you can buy like a medium format or like a big film and take the photo. It's gonna be very clear, but it still has its limit, right? I don't know what do you see, and we had this topic before, a cinematic look or a film look, right?
Yes.
Do you add grains in your photo just to make it look more film? Do you do that?
So grain is a big topic, but I also wanna, before I talk about this, I wanna go back to like the 5 categories that you mentioned. I think I agree with you. Like, on paper, and like even practically speaking, digital is way more practical and way more accessible, right?
Exactly.
Accessible meaning like easier, like in terms of workflow to work with, right? Than film. But like when it comes to the last one, which is picture quality, right? One of the things about film that is I've noticed is really amazing is the colors, right? The color that you get out of the film color, like that is freaking amazing, right? Like the color that you get out of these film stocks and film cameras is just beautiful, man. And like in terms of like functionality of film versus digital, I think that I've noticed something when you're shooting digital, it's almost like you are the director, right? You're the director of the shot, right? You have your shutter speed already set, like it's very easy to set it. Sometimes you have autofocus, you have your exposure set, like everything is very easy to set, and you're more focused on capturing the environment and the scene itself. When it comes to film, you are more like you're creating the shot, right? You're setting up your focus, you're setting up your shutter speed, you're setting up your exposure, and you're making sure, you have to make sure that everything, all of these elements are coming together in order for the image to come out perfect, which again goes back to the idea of like rarity. You have a limited amount of shot, you have limited amount of film stock, right? And you want to make sure that the footage or the photo or the outcome is quite good, right? And so you're more of playing more of a cinematographer role in that scenario, right? And so for learning, for the purpose of learning, if you're trying to learn the art of photography, I think film is a very good way to learn it, right? It's a very good way, because I've seen people who have said that like by shooting on film cameras for like 6 months, I've learned more than I have learned by shooting on digital for like 3 to 4 years, right? And I find truth in that, because film is harder. You are more like thinking about how the shot is being created, and you're kind of the artist in that scenario, right? And also, of course, like moving away from that into film grain, right? Like obviously the film grain is the thing that everybody talks about, everybody loves, and everybody likes. And so I think so film grain has a lot of purposes and a lot of goals and a lot of functionality. So one of them is like giving this nostalgic purpose. Like I find the film grain, especially in a certain context, enhances that nostalgic feeling, right? That's one thing. Another thing is that I think like it goes back to the idea of like imperfection, right? Like if you look at like digital is too perfect, like from an artistic standpoint, it's just too perfect. Everything looks clean and looks like just perfect, right? And the truth is like our life is not perfect, right? And so if you look at actually most of the cinematographers and most of the people who start out in the business industry, in the filmmaking industry, at the beginning they try to maximize like this perfection. They try to create this clean, beautiful image, right? That is that's like quite perfect. But then they realize that this is just it's not artsy, right? Quote unquote. It's just not artsy. And so they try to buy these like vintage lenses and add these kind of imperfections, right? In order to create that kind of imperfect look, which I find to be quite beautiful, you know?
Ibrahim,
I don't know.
I think the word that you're looking for is character.
Yes.
It's because every lens back then is not processed by these machines, right? I mean, it might be made by machine, but it's maybe unstable. So kind of like every lens has its own characteristic. So when you take the photo, you can really see difference between each lens, even if it's the same brand, even if it's the same model. As we're gonna mention about earlier, if we have enough time, every like let's say every anamorphic lens, every cinema lens, they have slightly different characteristic, and I think that gives your photo, your work, some more depth, because as you said, when everything is too perfect, in a way that you don't see any difference between all of them, right? You'd rather have a so-called imperfection in it, so you can see that there's a difference between your work and other people's work.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I feel like grain also adds more, like, again, I think grain is also, it adds a character and texture.
Yeah, as a texture image, right? To the image, yeah. Actually, one of the things that we used to fight about, right? Like, so I want to ask you about this. So my friend, the one who I used to work with in college, right? Obviously, when you're creating projects for school, you have total creative freedom in most of the times, right? And so you can add film grain, you can remove it, it's up to you, right? And there was always this fight between me and the person who I was working with, because he really liked film grain, right? And I liked it, but I didn't quite like it that much. And whenever we were working on a project together, eventually he would want to add film grain, right? And we would always get stuck in this, like, fall into this argument of like we would shoot our projects on a digital camera, on a mirrorless camera, right? and then the end results like looks very clean, and he would tell me like, well, you need to add film grain, and I was like, maybe like we don't need it, and then we would fall into this like kind of argument like whether we need film grain and we don't. And his argument was that basically when you add film grain, it kind of blends everything together, especially when you're working with graphics. It kind of like blends all the elements together and unifies the film, which is a very good argument. But at the same time, like, should you actually do that? Especially when you have shot your footage on a digital camera, like, is that quite necessary? And so we would always fall into this like kind of rabbit hole of like discussion, and sometimes we would add film grain, sometimes not. But I don't know what's the go-to choice here. Like, what do you think about that? Like adding the film grain.
That's extremely subjective. That's really subjective.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it really depends on the color, and I feel like at the end, if there's a director, just ask the director. That's all.
Okay.
Like, everyone just, because this is extreme. There's no right or wrong. Literally, there's no right.
Yes.
Because film grain, technically, and there's no such thing as better. There's just something that is closer to what the director wants.
Okay.
To what he imagined. So if this thing can get closer to what he imagined, then that's the right choice. There's no such thing as better, right? We all know that. So I feel like grain is just, it's just like even not even grain, even how do you call it? Noise, right? Noise.
Yeah, digital.
So
noise.
I love to take night photography, and sometimes when I take these very dirty, disgusting low light photo, and usually people will denoise, because in Photoshop the denoise is getting really, really good lately. That it basically just make the image look so clean, and it doesn't look like there's these weird denoise, make it blur. It doesn't have that. It's still very sharp. I don't even use denoise sometimes. I like it the way that it has these dirty noise. It just gives the mood that I want, because I like these neo-noir cyberpunk looking photos. So sometimes I feel like noise just gives what I want. So noise is not always bad. As long as this thing can, get closer to what you want, then that's the correct answer. Now, I want to jump into the next category. Actually, I think you thought the quality was the last one, but there's one more that I want to talk about, which is the process. And you actually talked about it, because you basically cover it. Like, the process is kind of the last category, which I would argue that film is better than digital.
Okay.
Like all of these four category, I say like, okay, digital wins.
Digital ones,
up. But process, I think this is the thing that is the least commercial category. Because we talk about other four, it's all about commercializing photography. The price, the speed, it's gonna be cheap and fast, so much function, good quality, right? These are all commercial stuff. But the process, this is something where arts come in. When you're doing artwork, the process is really important, because art is kind of like a manifestation of how you feel about something at that very moment, right? It's a very like I'd say it's more like a spiritual thing sometimes. It depends. But the process of taking film is that you make a lot more choice than if you were to do digital, because in digital it's like you have unlimited photos, clicks. So it's okay. I'll take 5, take 10. Okay, I'll change a little angle. I'll bend down. I'll shoot up. You basically just take everything you feel good about this area. Yeah. And then you can walk away with 200 photos, and you can continue to take for the rest of the day. But with film, usually
you have to
if you see one thing, you just take one. And the funny part is I really like this. And sometimes I hang out with my friends. We go take like film photographies as well. And what we do is we just look through the viewfinder, and we look at it for like 10 seconds. We're like, nah, that's not the one. And I really like that. I find it really funny. It's like you just look at it for 10 seconds, but you don't click it, and then you just walk away, because that's not the one. It's like that's not worth one of my 36 exposure. And I just like that, because in your mind you just start to process like, okay, is this worth a good shot? Is this worth? Because I also like to print out my photos. Whenever I take film, I usually print it out. Like a small one, not like a big frame one, but I like to print it out. So I always think about, should I, like, if I'm gonna print it out, is it worth to print it out? So you think about these kind of stuff, and then you're more careful with everything, every angle. You find what's the best. And I feel like film photography actually made me understand myself even more, because while I'm making those decisions, I start to think, why do I like this more than another? What's the difference? What makes it better? And then, so it actually affected how I take digital photography.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, as you said, I don't fully agree that taking film is way better than digital, but I do, as you said, I do see some truth in it, because film kind of trains your mentality a bit more, whereas digital, I feel like it kind of trains your like the technical side of photography. That's how I feel about it. I don't know what you see.
Yeah, I think also like digital, like I think it's always good to switch back and forth between both, right? Just to kind of like help yourself see in the best way possible, right?
And also switch like the perspective, right?
It switches your perspective. Yeah. I think that's very important to like kind of look at. It allows you to look at things from different perspective, and like you mentioned, like film is also like there's a reason why the top cinematographers to this day still shoot on film, right? Like it's this film look, it's this characteristics that film have that you can kind of replicate in digital, but still always like film would always be a kind of step ahead from that kind of point. And so I think it's always good to switch between both, and they're both are different in their own ways, you know. And